So my name is Dr. Shannon Bruce Ramaka, and I'm the head of ITESS. And it's my pleasure to talk with these students today who are in the first year of our program as we reflect on an experience that was a bit unusual this last month. And basically, in the last month, these students were normally participating in a face-to-face practicum. Even that term, face-to-face practicum, is new to us in the last year. But they were scheduled to spend a 2-week face-to-face practicum, and because of the COVID restrictions, we were not able to do that. And beginning this last November, thinking that this might be the case, I began this process of networking with professionals around the world and met a school district in Wisconsin that had a focus on international schools, and they wanted to collaborate in an innovative project. We didn't know what that innovative project would be at the time. This was thinking last November. But the idea was born that our 68 first-year students would join in virtually with 19 different mentor teachers, with a school district in Wisconsin that's called the Janesville School District, and Pius 11 High School. And so for 2 weeks, our students in the evening, so most of the time from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the evening, you guys will tell me more, you joined virtually in different classrooms. I had the opportunity to jump in and observe 5 different classrooms at the time, and it was such a remarkable experience. I feel like it transformed my own idea of what is possible to achieve with this blended hybrid learning environment if we get past the part that we just hate it and it's so awkward and difficult. So with me today, I have Micah and Justine and Matthew, who are in the first year of our program. And so what I'd like to start with is if you can lay the context of this story a little bit more. So if you can say who your, what grade your mentor teacher was. I guess do not mention the name of the teacher for confidentiality, and just share what age, the subject, the hours you jumped in on, the logistical aspect of this project. And who would like to go first?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, great.
So I did the teaching practice at Pius 11,
Okay.
and I followed 2 classes. Both were literature classes, but one was for freshman years, so year 9, and the other one was a combined class for juniors and seniors, so 11th and 12th grade, but both were literature classes.
Okay, great. Matthew?
And so I was with Craig High School,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm not mistaken, and I had 2 different teachers. One was for a human geography class, and then the other one was for an ESL, so English as a second language class, and we were working with freshmen, so 9th grade. So
Okay.
yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Micah?
Yeah, and I was in Janesville school. I was in a teaching practice for the social study class for ancient Greece as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it was for the 6th grade. The kids were so young and amazing, and I really enjoyed seeing them, how it worked actually, because it was my first internship ever, and seeing how they are learning. I also got to observe 2 classes, which was very special because the first class was for the more advanced group, even though they are all the same age, that's why it's important.
Mm-hmm.
And the second group was the group that were struggling a bit, and I got to observe the difference, and that was really amazing for me to see.
Great. I think I had an opportunity to drop in on one of your classes because the focus was 6th grade in ancient Greece.
Yeah.
But okay.
Yeah.
So the original intention was for observation. Okay. So we knew you all were mostly joining in the first time, and we thought, okay, you're going to be observing in classes. But the stories I heard is that in a short period of time, you were doing more than observing. So what I'm interested in is first, what did you learn by observing? What do you think you were able to learn? Matthew, do you have some idea?
Patience. You have to
Okay.
learn a bit of patience, not only because you're teaching online or working online,
Yeah.
but I think for me the group of students as well, because I was working with ESL students for the half of it, and those are students from different backgrounds you'd expect in the international school that aren't familiar with English as much.
Yeah.
Many of them from Central and South America, and I grew up in that kind of environment. So for me, I understood it a little bit. I understood where they were coming from, but you need patience, and I think that's the biggest thing you learn from observing, particularly in this internship. So.
Okay, so let's continue on this a little bit. So what did you learn in the process of observing? So if this project was to happen again with us, with different student teachers in different classrooms, if we were to use this as a prototype for student training, what do you learn from observing?
Well, I would like to say that observing is a lot more active than a passive thing. I thought I will be just sitting there and watching a screen, which does not sound very appealing when you talk about it, but it's actually a lot more. At some point, the students are standing in front of the screen and they are presenting their projects to me, and I was just sitting and analyzing each student and what they've learned and how they are presenting. And it's actually you're quite busy when you're sitting and observing. It's an activity that is keeps you in your mind. You're actually analyzing a lot of things at the same time. So I also try to focus on one thing each lesson, because there's a lot to observe.
This is really rich, and I would say principals who observe classrooms, when you're in a school and your colleague observes you, right? There is an art to observing, and it sounds like one technique you used was to focus on one thing. Can you give us an example?
Yeah, for sure. So, for example, as I'm becoming a teacher, I'm interested to see how, for example, I can maintain the class and maintain a good behavior in class. And that is very important for me to observe. But I was also interested, for example, more into activities. How can I arrange activities in class? And all of these things go together. You have to arrange activities and keep class in good order.
Yeah.
But how a teacher can do it is a bit complicated to me. I still don't understand how teachers can do it. Actually, it's a lot of work. So I try to focus on just one thing at a time. Yeah, and try to understand how this works and then move to the next one.
So I know in your particular class, students did work in small groups,
Yeah.
and moving from a large group to a small group, and a master teacher can make that look very easy.
Yeah.
But beginning teachers, usually it's a bit bumpy. You can waste a lot of class time. Did you observe any other small groups in action?
I did.
Okay.
But the classes that I observed were also hybrid lessons. So part of the students were on site and part of the students were joining the lesson online. So there was even a mix between groups in the classroom that had to be divided, and then also the students online. Now you use a program, in this case Google Meet or Google Classroom, so you push a button and the groups are made, but it takes a lot more energy and time to manage both groups, because well, first you know what your students on site are doing, but then you also need to check what are they doing online. Are they actually working, or are they doing something else?
Right. So I think this is one of the things that scares mentor teachers the most, right? Is how do I manage the in-classroom learning and this hybrid blended learning with students that were meeting. And so when I saw ITESS student teachers kind of taking some responsibility with some of those small groups, I thought that was brilliant. So did you have an experience with that where your mentor teacher kind of put you in a room with some of those other students?
Yeah,
Okay.
mine did. So well, we were doing the teaching practice with in groups of 3, so I had 2 other student teachers. We each went into a different online room to check on the students. In the beginning it's a bit awkward because you're new, you don't know them very well, but still you try. So you ask, okay, so how's it going? Do you understand the assignment? If you have questions, just ask. And in some cases, I also noticed that the students were working and they were able to help each other. So that's really good.
Wow. Did you have an experience with this, Matthew?
Not really, because
Okay.
I was the only one. The student teachers we were online, and all of our students were on site. So, but most of the classes were lecture based. They weren't not as engaged in small group activities. So they were completely on site. We were online. The only time we really interacted was behind the scenes after school, when we would grade the papers or provide feedback to the students. For example, in the ESL class, they were working on an essay, and they had a rough draft, and basically we went in after they submitted it to us, and then we corrected and gave them feedback. And I think that was nice, because I would have liked that when I was there. But yeah, I think it was valuable, but not too much small group interaction on.
Yeah, and that's also a creative way to use a student teacher as far as giving feedback on a rough draft or something. Great. So what you all are bringing up was just the variation that was in this project. One of the complaints we had from students was that there was so much variation. Why didn't one student saying, I wanted to have more of a leadership role in this experience. But I think when you hear each other's stories like this, and you understand the subject, the grade level, the style of the mentor teacher you were working with, there really are different styles. Can you think of something you learned from your mentor teacher during this experience? Yeah.
Yeah, a lot.
Okay, okay.
I had a great mentor teacher, and I can really tell that he went the extra miles for us as we are trying to learn. Especially that actually they had no online classes. The teacher was in a physical classroom, and the students too. And everything was prepared there for us, just for me to be there. And that was amazing. What I learned is a lot of teaching techniques, a lot of online tools. Even though they were in a class physically, they were still using online tools, because they just help with the learning process. I learned how to, as I said, keep a class in order. I learned a lot about how to give a lesson effectively, actually, how to transfer knowledge in an effective way. A lot of activities, a lot of things to do, keep the students busy, actually, in a good way, you know? It was very insightful, yeah.
Great. Okay. When you think about your mentor teacher, what are some takeaways?
Well, also like Mika's teacher, mine was amazing. She was very welcoming and open, and she really wanted our input. So during one of our meetings with our teacher, she said that she still had to come up with a summative assessment for one of the classes. So she asked us to help her think. And during that meeting, we actually came up with the activity or the assignment, the rubric, and everything. So that's one of the things that I've learned, that, well, how to create a final assessment, but also to think about the rubric, because that's something, well, we haven't learned yet. But it's nice to have that experience already. And she even gave us the freedom to teach each one of her classes ourselves. Of course, he helped us when necessary, but basically, we were allowed to take over.
Did you get any feedback from the students or from her after you did that?
Yeah, during the lesson, at the end I asked the students, so what do you think of the assignment? And in this case, it was a creative assignment, so they were able to do something else instead of writing. Before, they had to write an essay, so they were happy to do something else. In this case, they had to create a poster about the play they had read. So they were happy to do something different. And my mentor teacher, she was also very happy that we came up with this. And she only said good things about us.
And what's amazing is, so I saw either a video you sent me or a picture of this project. And so here you were from the Netherlands on your screen and on a screen, a large screen in a classroom in Wisconsin. And you were teaching a lesson to those students in the classroom. And I just thought that was just mind-blowing. Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Cool.
really, it was quite the experience. But it was helpful that the mentor teacher was there as well, because it was a bit difficult to communicate directly to the on-site students.
Right.
Because of the limitations with the technology. So wasn't able to fully hear them.
Were you nervous?
Yeah, right before it starts. Yes, of course.
Yeah,
But-
right? And what I'm impressed with was really your mentor teacher modeled collaboration at such a high level. One, what do you think about this lesson? How do we do this lesson together? And being vulnerable, not, having all the answers, but really creating an environment where you could take risks and experiment. Did you see that in evidence in the rest of her classroom?
Yeah, she even mentioned, of it said when we came together again, that she want to use our ideas for future lessons. And she even said, like, let's keep in touch, because I really want to exchange ideas with you. So if I have something, I'll contact you, but if you learn something new that I could use, please say so.
That's great. So both of you are sharing, when I ask you, what did you learn from your mentor teachers, and as well, your face lights up. And it really was clear to me from the feedback in the surveys after this experience, the number one success indicator or feedback was related to relationships.
Yep.
ITESS students were saying they appreciated their mentor teachers. Mentor teachers were saying they appreciated the ITESS students. Students in the classroom in Wisconsin were saying they appreciated you. And so just with an open-ended prompt, what were some highlights from this project? The most number of responses were related to relationships. And I thought, wow, we're in a virtual platform, and still the most important feedback is about relationships. What are your thoughts about that?
I would like to say that there was genuine interest, I think. So I started emailing my mentor teacher before actually the internship started. And we started sending videos of it's snowing here and it's snowing in Wisconsin, And when I was introducing myself, the teacher emphasized that I should introduce also where I'm from, my background, because he wants the students to actually learn and be exposed to new things. And I think there was genuine interest in, the both places and backgrounds and just learning in general. Yeah.
So what other thoughts have you had about this project? We're going to be doing this again 2 weeks, another 2 weeks in the middle of April. We're trying to improve it, make it even better. But when you think about those next 2 weeks, how are you preparing?
Good question.
I'm already thinking, okay, so what can I do next? Because before this first teaching practice, when I had a meeting with my mentor teacher, we did discuss that we would do only a student activity for like 20 minutes. But that student activity turned out to be a whole lesson, and in my case, even 2 whole lessons. So I am starting to wonder, okay, how can I top that?
So one of the things I would encourage us is to really look at what we learn by observing. And if you can interview some students even. But I know that you can use an observational tool. Did any of you use an observational tool like mapping, taking notes of what you saw, and then keeping track of who is communicating in the room? It's a style of mapping. There might be other ways to kind of learn to see from observing. But yeah, I think you're bringing up a good point. So it's open-ended. You're curious. You know, what can you create next? Did you introduce an online digital learning tool?
In this case, we use Canva to create
Okay.
posters.
Okay.
And for the second activity, I didn't use an online tool, but the students had to create what's it called, an elevator pitch for one of the characters that they were reading, and they would have to present next time, or they had to record themselves and then send it to the teacher.
I love that assignment. It takes so much effort and time to make a short elevator pitch. Yeah, great. So, Matthew, what are you thinking about the next 2 weeks? How could you, what's your approach? What's your thinking about it now?
Just trying to engage the students. Again, like especially with those ESL students, they're not as comfortable. Their English might not be as good. They're a bit shy, and I get it. So how can we engage them? Is really my focus, because it's a lot more difficult online though than if I were in there. I could walk around the room and energize them. But one of the things that the teacher did really good in that class was he tried to relate to them. He was an American guy. There's a room full of Hispanic students. He tried his best to add Spanish slang and different words just to make them familiar with you know, where they're coming from, and they play their favorite music when they're doing busy work or something like that. So giving them opportunities like that, especially to choose. I know we talk about that in ITESS, the program, giving the students the opportunity to choose. I think it's going to help me out a lot. So that's what I'm thinking about.
Do you speak Spanish?
Yes.
Okay.
So that helps. That helps also, because it's, again, I can relate to them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Great. Have you done any research on this topic yet?
No, I have not. I've
Okay.
talked to my aunt, of course, who has,
Yeah.
and she just recently did her dissertation for, doctorate degree, and it's similar to what I'm actually learning now, and I know you're familiar a little bit with it, so that helps me also.
Yeah.
Being able to talk to someone who's done, some extensive research on this. So,
Yeah.
yeah, but I personally have not looked too much into it yet.
Great. So hopefully you'll have a chance to talk with your mentor teacher ahead of time.
Yep.
Maybe your aunt can help provide you some
definitely.
ideas. Yeah. So any closing remarks on this? Let's say we were in complete lockdown again next year. And would you recommend this project for the first year students? Would you recommend a 1-week experience of this? Do you think that this should be included in international teaching education programs, or do you think only if there's a global pandemic should we do something like this? It's a long question.
I think it depends on if schools will keep continuing with online lessons. Maybe not full time, but it is possible that in some cases they find this more useful. So I do think I have the advantage of having experience in online teaching right now. So it's a good thing to include, but I think I would keep it small like this. So 2 weeks, maybe 3 tops, but not longer.
You guys agree?
Yeah, I agree. I don't
Yeah.
think online education is going anywhere. It's not. It's never gonna just go away. It's not. I don't want to say it's a new normal, because hopefully we get to a point where we can go back to that face-to-face, normal interaction. But it's definitely not going away.
I have to say, I might disagree with that point. I
Yeah.
think online education might actually be very much the future, not because of pandemics,
Yeah.
but because people are already been learning from the internet since the internet became a thing.
Yeah.
You can be in Portugal and teach Portuguese to someone from Japan.
Yeah, definitely.
So I really appreciate actually having both experiences. I want to learn how to teach online, but also I want to learn how to teach in a class.
Yeah.
So I think I would recommend both.
And would you be willing to be a teacher who's doing hybrid blended learning, right? So I actually think this is the future,
Yeah.
where we are trying to meet the needs of the students in our classroom. Then we have some students home who are sick, or maybe other issues are going on and they want to join in maybe some student teachers from around the world want to help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
It doesn't seem intimidating to you as a new teacher to try to juggle all that?
I think if that's going to be the case, like if it's just 1 or 2 students, it will be doable to do it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if it's going to be like 50-50, so half of your students online, half of your students are on site, I think you need an extra person to keep track on what's happening online. And if somebody has a question, that you'll be able
Mm-hmm.
to dive into it and not like 10 or 20 minutes later.
Right.
Like an aid. You need
Something like that.
aid.
Yeah.
Well, maybe even teachers can share.
Mm.
So Miss Christine helped me when I was teaching a democratic citizenship class, and she ran around with her iPad around when I was teaching. And I couldn't have managed the 50 students I was teaching,
Yep.
plus the 15 that were in online. I couldn't have managed. And I've often thought, well, maybe you could have a student in your classroom to kind of take over that role. Do you think that that's possible? Like in a high school classroom, that you would just say, okay, Mary, you're on. You know, you're going to take notes from your time online. Your job is to try to keep connected with these students online. But I agree with you. You do need someone else to help you when the numbers get really big.
True.
So, one more question. So we did a survey at the end of this experience, and one of the questions was, overall, was this a positive cultural impact for you? And the responses were so positive. It was like an 8.7 on a scale from 1 to 10. And I'd just like to understand that more. How did this 2-week virtual experience have a cultural impact, either on you or the students or the mentor teacher? In your opinion, how did that happen?
I think for the students in Wisconsin, they got in touch with somebody, well, in this case from the Netherlands, but from a different continent. So basically not an American teacher. So I think that was new for the students. For me, it was a cultural experience because I got to have a look into a different classroom, as in I'm Dutch, I grew up in the Netherlands, I went to a Dutch school, but it was an American school. So I got to dive into the American culture and had a good look on what's like teaching students from a different country.
So I'd love to know how you think it's different and the same, but let's see what you all say.
Well, I think it varies a bit because I grew up in that system, that American system. But so when I first saw that question, was this a meaningful cultural impact?
Mm-hmm.
At first I thought no, because I've already experienced this, it's not that new. And then I really thought about it, and I thought Texas is a lot different than Wisconsin. And the south and the north of the country the differences are quite, immense. So I really thought about it and how they do teaching and learning there. And I tried to connect that to what I did in Texas. And so yeah, you find some things you really like and I wish I had, and then there's things that, I thought maybe what I learned could also be, implemented there. So at the end of the day, it did have a positive impact on me. Yeah.
Wow, there's a lot in that. That's very, very interesting. So my teaching education was from Oregon.
Yep.
Okay, and I also I was noticing similarities and differences, just observing the classes in Wisconsin. Yeah. So, yeah.
I would agree. I think if I think about the question, obviously there was a lot of positive cultural effect and impact on it. I personally learned a lot in the cultural aspect as well, about teaching. For example, I introduced myself as Mika to the students, which is a no-no. In the US, you introduce yourself with your last name, Mr. Bitar.
Mm-hmm.
I'm used to the Dutch system here. And I also think that a lot of students as you mentioned, don't know what the Netherlands is or Syria is, and I had a question actually, what language do you speak? Even though I was speaking English to them, and I said, well, yeah, I speak English, but obviously I speak other languages as well, like Arabic and Dutch. So students were just interested in the cultural aspect of it and the background. And one important thing also my mentor teacher said, that the students are from low socioeconomic households usually in that school, so they don't get to travel a lot. And the fact that I can be just in my room on a screen with these students to get them a bit of that international experience, I think that's really important for them to grow up and learn about other places. So definitely there was a lot of positive cultural exchange.
Yeah, it's the cheapest way to travel,
It is.
right? And just
Yeah.
have a conversation with someone who's different,
Yeah.
who's from a different place, different languages. And it sounds like your students were curious.
Yeah.
And really, if we can encourage curiosity in others, in other cultures, that really is that global mindset that we want to encourage. It's really beautiful to hear that. So let's just end on that.
Perfect.